am committed definitely to today. It's under discussion about who's going to give 2 and 3. It really depends on how today goes, because this is my first talk back since I had my son. So we'll see if, thank you, if my husband does not run in here screaming with a screaming baby, then I may be able to do session 2 and 3. This is kind of the pilot one, so we'll let you know. But the series is called Facing Your Giants, and what this series essentially is going to cover is how to face the difficult times in your life that seem like giants. So the reason we call them giants is because it's something that feels like it's bigger than you. So I've had many giants. I just had a giant. My son was born 3 months early, so we were in the NICU for almost essentially 3 months. So I just had a giant right now. So a giant is essentially any situation or any hurdle or any spiritual struggle that feels like it's bigger than you. And that's why we call it a giant, because obviously a giant is inevitably bigger than you. And everybody has a giant. The giant can take many forms. This is my most recent, but I've had many other giants that look very different. However the giant presents or however it manifests doesn't matter. The question is, how do you face your giant and how do you overcome your giant? Because your strategies will generally be the same for overcoming your giant. So when asked how do you face your giants, I really have no idea. So what I usually do in these kind of talks is I turn to somebody who's done it and somebody who's done it well. So we're going to take the story of David and Goliath, somebody who physically faced a giant, literally, and won, and see how we can take from what David did and apply that to our own giants here, okay? So just a little bit of context. I'm sure everybody knows the story of David and Goliath, but just in case you don't, little shepherd boy David, really a nobody, not a big thing. There was a big giant, literally a giant, like physically a giant, not a metaphor or anything like that, who was kind of decimating everybody and just annihilating everybody, and they couldn't defeat him. And then little David shepherd boy, the most unassumed, the most random, the most unexpected, is the person who defeated him. So that's kind of the synopsis, and then we'll get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty. So who is David? You guys don't have Bibles, but you guys have Bible apps? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. So who was David? Can someone read for me 1 Samuel 16, 1-13? And I'm not being rude, I'm just checking the time to make sure that I'm on time, okay? Anybody, the first person who gets it open, just start reading. Anybody who has a fast phone. Okay, just gonna interrupt you right there. So just for some context, Saul was the king, anointed by God. Saul kind of fell off the bandwagon, was not being as legit as he previously was. So God turned his favor away from Saul, and they're now looking for a new king for God to anoint. So God is sending his prophet to the house of Jesse to anoint a new king. Okay? Keep going. Okay, I'll stop you there. So, sorry, that was a long-winded way of explaining that David was the least of his brothers, okay? So he had however many brothers, I'm not sure, count them, okay? But nobody thought to invite David to this little, like, anointing of a king gathering because David, like, it never occurred to them. Like, David was so unprepared, David was so unqualified that it didn't even occur to them to bring David. Like, from what they make it sound like and from, like, tradition, David was like the annoying little brother, okay? And he was kind of always on his own. He was much younger than the rest of his brothers. Like, they were all, the way they make it sound, these, like, big, bulky men, and they went and they volunteered in Saul's army, and they were all this and that. And right when they told Jesse, like, oh, yeah, we're going to come and anoint a king from your household, he brought his eldest son and said, oh, it must be this guy. This guy's great. He's big, and he's bulky, and he's strong, and he's the most reliable, and he's in Saul's army, et cetera, et cetera. And David didn't even occur to anybody. Didn't even cross anybody's mind because he's like a little runt. Like, he's nothing, okay? To the point where the brothers would go all together and volunteer in Saul's army, and David would just be tending the sheep. Like, it's not even reasonable for him to volunteer because he's so little, and he's so young, and he's so much younger than the rest of them, and he's so unqualified. And the way they make it sound like David was random. So they're all volunteering in the army, and they're working on their dad's property, and they're doing this and doing that, and David's, like, ruddy and good looking. So what ruddy means is he's red in the face, okay? And the reason they use the word ruddy is because that is something that was not seen as favorable. So in that time frame, okay, people who were prestigious, people who were, like, you know, officials and professional and well off were very pale, because red in the face or tan skin made it look like you were a slave working out in the fields, and therefore you were not well off. So this is like a theme that you'll see even in, like, English literature, in whatever. Anybody who's well off or prestigious or like somebody who's respected is very pale, or as white as they can be, because it's not seen as prestigious for you to be out working in the fields. And that's what David did. David spent his whole time out chasing after sheep and singing songs by himself out there on the grass. Like, he was random. He was the least qualified out of everybody. And it says here, David was the youngest, and the three oldest followed Saul, so they went to his army. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Like, he was just like he got the grunt work. He didn't get anything prestigious because he was just the younger brother. Not at all reasonable, not at all qualified, not at all anybody that someone took notice of. He was just the youngest brother, okay? Now, who was Goliath? So when I was younger growing up, I always read the story thinking there must be some sort of, like, metaphor, okay? Like, there must be something that, like, we don't have giants. Giants are not a thing. They don't exist. Like, there's got to be a metaphor in here somewhere, okay? And then I did the conversions with what they say. Like, so in 1 Samuel 17, they describe Goliath in, like, cubits and blah, blah, blah. And so I actually spent some time and I did the conversion, and he really was a giant. 9'6" was how tall Goliath was. Like, he really was a giant. I don't know why there were giants back then and there aren't any right now. You can ask somebody who's done history for their major. I really have no idea. But he was a giant. 9'6", okay? And so the weight of just his armor, which they also describe in 1 Samuel 17, you can read it. It's a lot of descriptors, and you have to Google the conversions, but you can find it if you're looking for it. So just the weight of his armor was 125 pounds. Just the weight of his armor, okay? And just his spearhead was 15 pounds, okay? That's a lot to me because, like, none of my children are 15 pounds, and I'm struggling to carry them right now. So this is just the spearhead, like, not the spear, is 15 pounds. And just his armor is 125 pounds, and he's 9'6". Like, a little bit of, like, personal disclosure, like, my husband is 6'3", and he's 240 pounds. So what's 9'6"? Like, I don't know what he weighs, but is he a giant? Yes, he's a giant, okay? So physically and literally, this is about facing giants, because Goliath was literally a giant, okay? So this is just, like, to scale. So these are the tallest people that ever existed in history, okay? And they're in the 7s. Goliath was 9'6", so he wouldn't even have made it in the span of the picture. He wouldn't have made it, okay? And these people had, like, medical conditions. Like, this is not like a normal person who's just born at, like, 7, 9. Okay. So, how did it happen that David faced Goliath? Because nobody asked him to. Okay? He wasn't in the army. He wasn't a logical choice. How did it happen? Okay? Jesse told his son, Jesse's his dad, told his son David, go bring them lunch, essentially. Okay? That's the summary of that little paragraph right there, is go bring your brother's lunch. And that's also a very good reflection of David's perceived role. Like, he's like the grunt. Like, just go bring them lunch and come back. Like, giving him a job to keep him busy. Just go bring them lunch and come back. See how they're doing? Let me know. Keep me posted. But nothing of value, okay? So David, on the day that this happened, which was a monumental day, which was life-changing for David, was there to bring them lunch. Not for any reason, not because somebody needed him, not because somebody solicited his help, not because anybody valued him. He was just there, okay? Similarly, a lot of the times when you're facing your giants, you're not looking for it. You're not looking for a situation. You're not there snooping out something that's going to essentially own you. It just happens, okay? My son was born at 29 weeks. I went into labor. Like, it just happens, right? Like, these are not things that you necessarily ask for. These are not things that you necessarily go looking for. These are things that sometimes are just like the circumstances aligned, and that's what happened. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't think that anything's a coincidence. I believe that every giant that you're ever given and every giant that you ever face, you're facing for a reason. Because I personally don't believe in coincidences. I don't think that happens. But it's not that you went looking for it. Okay? Similar to David. Okay? Now, I love this part. Poor guy, like David was so, he was so not respected for a while. So he went looking, okay? And David is there, just like a little bit of a summary. So David's there, and he's like, what's going on? And he's seeing Goliath, and he's looking for his brothers. He actually didn't end up giving them their lunch. He just kind of dropped it off with somebody, and then went to, like, you know, see, like, what's going on. Like, a little bit of gossip there, okay? And so he's sniffing around, and he's asking people, like, oh, why isn't anybody, like, fighting Goliath? Why isn't anybody facing Goliath? Like, what's going on? And he's just this, like, annoying little kid who's, like, yapping at their heels. Like the way they make it sound in this passage, he's like a little chihuahua, just like barking at people, and everyone's just trying to shoo him off. He's like, what? Why isn't anybody fighting him? And everyone's just like, shh, like, don't get involved in things that you don't understand because you're a little kid, okay? And then his brother actually finds out that he's yapping at people and yells at him in the passage. Like, the equivalent of, like, can you just go home? Like, just stop embarrassing us with all your yapping and just go home, okay? This is David, okay? But this is how he was perceived when he was younger, as the most unqualified person for anything. Not only to face Goliath, for anything. Like, the task that was appropriate for who he was to bring them lunch. That's it, okay? That's all he could do. So when you look at your giant and you feel small, there is nobody who was smaller than David. There is nobody. He is the most unqualified, the most under-respected is David. So that's why, to me, this is a perfect analogy, because there is no giant that was bigger than Goliath, who was 9'6", and there is no, like, unqualified person who was smaller than David, who's the annoying little brother, okay? That gap between David and Goliath will never be bigger than the gap between you and your giant, never. David takes the cake, okay? All right, now, how did David do it? So every time somebody asks me these kind of questions, I really don't know. Like I have to defer to somebody who's done it well. And this is David. David did it well, okay? So for the next 3 series, 3 sessions, we're going to take David's step-by-step process into how he overtook Goliath and then apply that, okay? So I don't know if you guys have ever read the passage carefully, but when he decided to take on Goliath, it's very clear about he went and chose for himself 5 smooth stones, okay? What I love about, like, Bible stories like this is that the wording is never arbitrary. It's never arbitrary. Like, every time you dig deep into a story like this, you find that everything in every wording, every, like, descriptor is not arbitrary. It's very purposeful. So David went and chose for himself 5 smooth stones. We all know how the story ended, okay? We knew that he only needed 1, but he chose 5, okay? So let's go through stones, Okay? So, stone number 1, okay? And we're gonna associate a strategy with each stone that he picked up for facing the giants, okay? So, stone number 1, the stone of the past. Remember God's victories in your life, okay? If you are here, okay, I imagine a graduate. I don't really know the demographic of everybody in the crowd, but I imagine you are reasonably far along in your life. You're not in elementary school, you're not in high school, maybe. You could be in high school, I'm not sure. If you're in high school, that's okay. But you have faced a giant in the past, okay? It will be very hard for me to believe that somebody in this room has never faced a giant. Somebody in this room has never felt like they're in a situation that's bigger than them, has never looked a hurdle in the face and felt like it's not bigger than them. That's very hard for me to believe, no matter who you are. And maybe if you are in high school, okay? Maybe that hurdle to somebody else seems like it's silly, it's elementary. But for you, that's the biggest thing you've ever faced, and that's fine. Everybody in this room has faced something, and the fact that you're still here means that that giant that you faced did not overcome you, okay? Every single person. So God has been victorious in your life, at least once. I'm sure it's more than once, but at least once, God has shown victory in your life. Remember that, okay? That's exactly what David did. So when can I get someone to pull out their Bible app and read 31 to 37? Just shut it out, whoever gets it first. First person to get it. Go. So I'll just stop you for a second right there. So David's telling him, like, essentially you guys are all wussies. Nobody wants to go and face Goliath. I'll do it. I'll do what you guys are not man enough to do, okay? And Saul's looking at him like, are you joking? This guy's been fighting in wars for his entire life. You run after sheep all day. Like, you bring your brothers their lunch. Like, it's like asking somebody who's studying, like, music to go and perform cardiac surgery. Like, this is not reasonable. This doesn't make any sense, okay? Sorry, go on. This is what I love about David, okay? His confidence. And his confidence not in himself. So Saul's telling him, you're a shepherd boy. You don't know anything. You have no qualifications. You're useless. Like, you're the most unqualified person I can imagine to take this task on. And David's saying, you're right. I have tended my father's flock from my youth. You're right. I am a shepherd boy. But the same way God saved me from the paw of the lion or the paw of the bear, whatever whatever example he used, he will do the same for right now. David remembered God's victories in his life. David didn't walk around and say, I'm the man, I fought a bear, and I fought a lion, and I saved all these sheep. David walked around and said, God's the man. God saved me from a lion and from a bear and from a sheep. And God's done that with you guys 100%. He's done that with me 100%. My son is alive. God's done that with me, okay? Like, 100%. God has done that with me. Like, the key here is not David's strength or David's abilities or David's qualifications. It's David remembering that God is always on his side and bringing that forward to the situation that's in front of him right now. And that's hard. Okay? Nobody's saying that that's easy. That's hard. Because when you're in the middle of a situation, when you're staring a giant in the face and you feel 2 feet tall and that situation is so much bigger than you, you already feel like you failed. You already feel overcome. You already do. And I know you already feel that way. So it is hard to bring forward the things that God has already done. It is hard. But that is the first way that you're going to be able to overcome these giants. So a little bit of like propaganda here, okay? Anybody who knows me knows that I am a big fan of quiet time. Sorry, I keep staring at the door to make sure my husband's not going to run in here with screaming babies. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a big fan of quiet time, okay? Big fan, okay? It is very hard in the middle of a difficult situation to remember the things that God has done for you. It is easier to remember those things if they are written down. Much easier, okay? For those of you who know me, okay, I am the least, like, artsy-fartsy, like, emotional, like, meditate, like, that's not me, okay? Like, that is not me, okay? And so the first time somebody told me to do quiet time and write in a journal, okay, that's not me. And that's great for a lot of people, and no disrespect about that kind of stuff, okay? But that is not me. I don't do poetry. I don't do, like feelings, like, I don't do that, okay? I don't do that, okay? But I can tell you, when these people finally convinced me to do this and to give it a try, I cannot tell you how many times in my life I have flipped back through previous quiet time journals to a point where I felt like I was drowning, a point where I felt like I was abandoned, where I felt like there is no way out of the situation, and gone and read through my despair, and then read through how he came through in the clutch. I can't tell you. Like, for those of you who don't know me, like, I don't know how to, like, adequately relate to you how not me that is. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like, there's people in the crowd who know me, like, not me, okay? I don't journal, I don't meditate, I don't read poems, I don't do that, okay? If there is anybody that can ever convince you that this works, it's me. Because it took months of convincing for me, okay? It is a lot easier to remember God's victories in your life if they are written down. The difference between somebody who is overcome by a giant and somebody like David who overcame their giant is that David saw Goliath from God's perspective, not from his own. David saw Goliath not as a giant, as a way for God to show his glory. That's how David saw Goliath. When I see my situations, I'm not David, okay? I'm telling you what David did, but it's not like I do that. I'm not David, okay? I see them as giants. I see them as, like, impossible. But that's not what David saw. David saw, this is going to be really fun for God. That's what David saw, okay? And David could see that because David has a good memory. David can remember the last time that this was going to be really fun for God. The last time that something impossible is happening and God was just going to take care of it. That's David. And that puts his problems into perspective. That's why when he walked up to Saul, overconfident and saying, oh, let no man's heart fail him because of this guy, like, that's a very bold statement. But David can say that because his confidence is not in himself. His confidence is in God, and he remembers that God has done greater before and will continue to do greater again and again and again. The key here is not relying on your own strength. The key is your memory, okay? And if you have a bad memory, it's even more important for you to write these things down. Like, the ones that I have are not only written down, like, they're accessible. Like, it's not like I have to go downstairs in the basement and, like, dig through 10 boxes to find it because I'm never going to look at it. They're accessible. Like, my current one is here, and the previous 6 or 7 or whatever of them are all underneath it. Because when I need it, like, I need that reassurance. I need to not go looking for it. I need it to be accessible because I'm in despair. I'm already, like, tethering on a cliff of, like, giving up. Like, I need it to be there. So if you don't have a good memory, I can't tell you, like, the writing down is even more important than somebody whose memory is fantastic. Abuna Thomas wants me to put comics in these talks. So here's the comic for Abuna Thomas. He's a funny guy. I'm not that funny. Like, it's fine. Sorry, this is my little propaganda for quiet time. So David is a good example of remembering God's victories in your life. All you have to do, okay, if you need more proof than this, is to just go to BibleGateway.com, which is what I do. I don't know the Bible like off the top of my head. I'm not very good like that. And just in the keyword search, put remember, okay? Like the amount of verses that will pop up with remember his marvelous works, remember what he's done in your life, remember the Lord in the days of your youth, remember. Like, it is the easiest and most accessible tool he has ever given us for facing and overcoming your giants. 100%. Because it takes nothing. It takes either remembering on your own, which is zero materials, or writing it down and referring to a piece of paper. Okay? It is like the most reliable form of hope ever. You know he's done X, Y, Z in the past. There is no reason to believe that he won't do X, Y, Z in the future. The difference between David and people who've lost is David's memory. Okay, so that's stone number 1, the stone of the past. Okay? Stone number 2. The stone of prayer. I have like 3 minutes left. Okay? So when David was anointed as king, just for some context, okay, David was chosen as king in that situation that we talked about with Jesse and his brothers and everything, okay? But he didn't become king for a long time because Saul wouldn't let go, okay? And Saul tried to hunt him and kill him, and it was a big drama, okay? But he didn't become king for a very, very long time. But he was the anointed king, okay? Like, what that means is that God chose him, and so effectively in the eyes of God, at that moment, David was whatever, he's like a teenager or whatever he was, okay? In that moment, Saul was no longer king, and David was king. Whether or not the law abided by that, whether or not people recognized that, it didn't matter. In the eyes of God, Saul was no longer king, and David was, okay? David was chosen. So, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward, okay? So, like I said, in the eyes of God, David was his anointed king, like his messenger, from that day forward, okay? God didn't choose David randomly, okay? God chose somebody who knew him, okay? God chose somebody who had a relationship with him already. So David was perceived as this like random kid who was like playing in the fields all day and running after sheep and like useless and whatever. And that's fine. That was his perception, okay? But when David was out running in the fields all day, David was running in the fields with God. Like, this is somebody that already had a relationship with God. Like, for David to say, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. That's somebody who knows God. That's somebody who has spent time with God. That confidence doesn't come, like, just off the top of your head. That confidence comes from experience. That confidence comes from knowing him and from spending time with him. So, yes, he was perceived as this random kid who's just running around in the field, but his running around in the fields was his spending time with God. Was him talking to God, was him like looking for God's glory in the paw of the lion and the flowers. Like, I mean, I'd love to be as poetic as he is. I'm not, okay? But that's David. That's somebody who took whatever situation he was in and found him and looked for him and tried to develop a relationship with him. David was already with God. God chose David because he was already there. He already knew him. They knew each other. So this is not somebody that just, like, randomly, okay? That's David's second stone. So the difference between David and other people is, yes, his memory, but also David tried to spend time with God, right? So now, because I have, like, 2 kids now, my focus is shifted and whatever. I have to be a good mom for both of them, okay? And people are sending me all these, like, mom articles and, like, whatever, and the power of a praying mom, and that's great, okay? That's great. When you find time to pray, that's great, okay? But somebody said something to me recently, and they said, and it cut me deep because, like, I'm not sleeping right now, so I'm obviously not praying very much. It said, the best thing you can do for your family is become a praying mom. Like, and the way the passage made it sound was like, you could be completely hands-off and, like, the most neglectful mom, but if you're one of those, like, praying moms, your kid's going to be all right, okay? I want to believe that. I really do, okay? But that's David in a nutshell. Obviously, he's not a mom, but, like, that's him in a nutshell, okay? David believed in the power of prayer. He believed in it, okay? He believed that much is accomplished in prayer. And you see that not just from this situation, okay, and from his time in the fields or whatever, okay, throughout David's life, okay? Any little thing that happened, David's like, thank you very much. I'll be right back. I have to go and pray. Like, in the middle of any situation, when he's king, when he's not king, when he's fallen off the bandwagon with God, okay, when they're on the outs, okay, every little thing that happens, David is the type of person that just, we got to put a pause on this. I'll be right back. And has to go and bring it to God in prayer. That's David, okay? I don't want to be a hypocrite and tell you that I do this, okay? I don't. I really don't, okay? Especially not right now. I really don't, okay? But do I believe that if I did this, it would work? Yes. Wholeheartedly, yes, okay? Because there was a time in my life, before kids, that I did this. And it works. It works. Like, David's strengths are his memory because he remembers God's victories in his life. And David is smart. David sees what works and he keeps doing it. We're stupid, okay? We know what works. We're told what works. We've tried it and it works, but we still don't do it regularly. That's me, okay? I know it works. I see David. I've tried it personally and I know it works, but I'm still not doing it. And I want my kids to turn out and be perfect and not scream and sleep through the night. I'm stupid because I know. I've been given this tool already. I've been given this stone already. That's David. Okay? David, like I wish, like I love David. The reason I love David is because he's so dramatic, okay? And I'm dramatic, okay? David is all like highs and lows and woe is me and my bones are weary and I love God, and he's just up and down, okay? But the only thing consistent about David, not his emotions, are what he knows to be true. So in the midst of his ups and downs, he sticks to and he holds on to what he knows to be true, which is, so far in our talks, remembering God's victories in your life and the power of prayer, the power of spending time with God, the power of investing your time in a relationship with God, the power of taking a pause on whatever you're doing and pulling back to give it to Him first. Before you react, before you say anything, to just pulling back and giving it to Him first, okay? These are the words of somebody who knows that God is with them, okay? So this is David now addressing Goliath, the Philistine. They refer to him as the Philistine. It's like so disrespectful, okay? You come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. Okay, just for a visual, okay? 9'6", like pushing 5, maybe, okay? They describe him historically as very small, okay, a little guy. 9'6", pushing 5 feet, I will take your head from you. Okay? That confidence is not David's confidence. That confidence is from somebody who knows God. And somebody who knows God because they've invested time in their relationship with God. That confidence is like what I would love to have in the face of these giants. I don't have it, but I would love to. And I can have it if I invested the time. We can all have it. This is another piece of propaganda, okay? Sorry. I'm a big fan of quiet time. Sorry, okay? When I started in this stuff, okay, in this journey of whatever, your spiritual journeys, whenever they start. Mine started later on in life, okay? My first question was always be practical. Like I mentioned before, I'm not the huffy fluffy, I don't like these open-ended directions of just find your relationship with Him. Okay, that's great. Tell me what to do. What do I physically sit down and do? What do I do? I don't like to leave things open-ended. I don't like that, okay? And so the reason quiet time is so, I'm harping on it so much, is because that was the first thing that anybody ever taught me to do that was realistic. Sit down for this amount of time, take this Bible passage, here's the schedule, read this, think about this, and then write this, Okay? I need that. I'm not good at open-ended. This is just me, though. Like, I'm sure there are many people in the crowd who are better at stuff like this. This is just me, okay? So when somebody told me to invest in my relationship with God, my first question was, what does that mean? Like, what do I do? Like, do I go to more liturgies? Do I go to Tezbaha? Anybody knows what that is? Like, what do I do? Tell me what to do. This was the first thing that I could do, that I could be given instruction on, okay? And I came to learn later on in life that investing in your relationship with God can take many forms, okay? But for me, this was the starting point. This was the first step before I learned what that would look like for me personally in my relationship with God. That's why I'm harping on this, because it's something that's just, it becomes black and white in the beginning. Here's a schedule. You want a schedule? I have it on my phone right now. I will email it to whoever wants. Here's a schedule. Every day, this is the passage. Read this. Figure out what part of the passage sticks to you, and then figure out why, and then write it down. Done. Next day, repeat. And then your relationship starts to build from there. That's how it worked for me. If anybody wants a schedule, you let me know. I'll email it to you. Other than that, I don't have anything to tell you about what that physically means. Like for some people, it's liturgies, and that's great. Go to more liturgies. If you hear him and you find him in liturgies, do that. For some people, it's service, okay? I can speak to that too. I love service. I think I find him in service more than I find him anywhere else, okay? Whatever it is for you, I don't know. But if you're looking for a starting point in how to invest in your relationship with him, for me, this is it. Because it's step by step until you figure out your own steps. Okay? So, session 1. What time is it? Am I late? I'm 5 minutes late, sorry. Okay? The stone of the past and the stone of prayer. Those are the two stones that we've covered so far. In number 2, we're going to cover 3 and 4, and then the last stone will be covered in the last session. Okay? Any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for a great talk. Guys, can we give her a round of applause, please? That was great. So I was asked to say 3 announcements. Therese, do you want to come and give the first one? Okay. Hi there. My name is Teresa. I recognize most of you guys here. I just wanted to let you know about a seminar that we have going. So I'm involved with an organization called the Coptic Medical Association of North America. And for the first time ever, we're hosting a bioethics seminar. And Toronto was chosen, actually, as the city in North America to do this in because euthanasia, or what we call it here, medical assistance in dying, has been legalized for the last 2 years. So Canada is struggling with these bioethics issues. And so this is why Canada was chosen, actually, for the host city for this conference or this seminar. So we're hosting this on March 23rd, which is 2 Saturdays from yesterday. And it's going to be at the Toronto Airport Marriott Hotel. So it's about 5 minutes away from the airport. I know it's a little bit of a trek for some people here, but we tried to make it central for people coming from the States, from Mississauga, and from Toronto. So that was kind of the compromise location. It starts at around 8 a.m. in the morning, ends around 4 in the afternoon. And the topics are what you see up top. So essentially the Orthodox perspective on life and death, where Christian bioethics comes into play at work, in our faith. How do we engage people outside in these conversations, not just from our theological point of view, but also how do we make it practical day to day? How do we understand other people and help them understand where we're coming from as well? Pain and suffering, end-of-life issues like euthanasia, the do not resuscitate, and the pulling the plug issues that are so controversial even within our church and in our community. And the healing partnership between patients and providers, or even just an extension of that. And it says in the second page of the form. Oh, it's not there. But anyway, everyone is welcome to this. And the reason is because all of us at some point will face this dilemma of someone saying, you know what, I've had enough of life, I want to die. okay? Sometimes they may be serious, sometimes they may be not. Sometimes it may be due to a physical illness, sometimes it could be from a mental illness. But the sad reality is, unfortunately, in Canada right now, we have this legislation that is very vague and is opening the door to people going through with this legally. And so no longer are people feeling like they can have the conversation of, oh, you know, no, let's talk about this. Are you doing okay? A lot of people are saying, well, no, I don't want to, you know, this is the person's right. I'm going to respect their right. If they want to die, they die. And, you know, you don't have to put your hands up, but how many of us here have gone through something so excruciating, whether physical or emotional or psychological, where we say, I want to die. I just don't want to be here anymore. And then things change, right? And this is what happens to a lot of humans. But unfortunately now we have this gateway where people can do this. In a very difficult time in their lives, they can choose to do this, and we oblige them legally. So we do really want the community to come out and bring their perspectives and bring their stories. We have healthcare providers of all types coming in from all over North America, and we do have also clergy who are coming to bring in the theological perspective. We have 3 amazing speakers who will be here. So Father Stephen Muse is a very experienced deacon in the States, who's a psychologist who deals with people that have a lot of trauma and have had suffering. So he understands how to counsel people who have gone through that. Father David Milad and Brother Antonius are both former physicians who have also experienced a lot of this from the medical standpoint and also from the clergy standpoint now too. So we'd love to have you all come and see me. I'm sitting at the back, and if you want any more information or how to register, registration deadline is supposed to be tonight, but we're going to extend it a little bit till next Sunday for all of you lovely folks. So just come in and talk to me, and we'll chat. Okay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Titi. So our next announcement is for the Harvest Spiritual Day. The Harvest is one of the service groups here at SMSV, and we're having a spiritual day on April 6th. And it's going to be like a full day. I'm pretty sure lunch is provided. And if you guys want to register for it, the link is up there, but also you can follow the link on the SMSV website. And it's called Standing in the Gap, and I'm really looking forward to this one. And then the final announcement is there is a grad retreat in Oakwood Resort Grand Bend, and it's from April 12th to the 14th, so it's usually about a week or a little over a week before Easter, so the week before Holy Week. And this year's topic is life through death, and the deadline for that is next week, so March 16th for the early bird, and then March 29th for the deadline. All right. So if you are not on our mailing list already, please come and speak to me so I can add you. We send 1 email a week, and it's just information about what we're going to discuss, the title of the series, or any other events that we have. If you have any questions, please come and speak to me after. I'll be hanging around for a little bit, and have an awesome Sunday.